Well, Thanksgiving has come and gone, and with it went another Giants loss. Joining me now is our dear friend John Schmeelk, who's become quite the regular on the show. John, did you at least get to eat well this past Thursday?
Thursday, not so much, but Friday, I more than made up for it, Mike. Don't worry about it.
All right, good stuff. Let's get to the Giants who played on Thanksgiving. They're riding a 7-game losing streak. They're at 2-10 on the year. I didn't realize going into Thursday against the Cowboys that Drew Lock would be starting in place of the injured Tommy DeVito. We'll get to DeVito in a minute, but what was your take on Lock's performance in his first start and first legitimate performance of the year?
Yeah, it was a slow start, and that's to be expected. He hasn't taken any full speed reps with the one since the summer. And that's tough for a quarterback to find your timing, find your rhythm. He played better in the second half. Of course, it was after the Cowboys started playing a little bit softer zone. So, I like, depending on who starts this week, and we'll get to that in a second, I'd like to see how he can continue going along this path after that rough first half. But it was the two takeaways that really killed the team. DeMarvion Overshown made a really nice play on that screen pass to return it for a pick six. Wasn't really that bad of a pass or decision by Locke, just a really good defensive play. And, then he got stripped trying to run up the middle on a scramble. So he's got to clean up those turnovers. That's really what cost the Giants the game. But otherwise, rough first half, but he played better in half number two.
Now, it wasn't a blowout. The Giants even had the lead at one point. I know you said this was supposed to be a good game against the Cowboys. Where did it go wrong for the Giants as a whole?
Well, look, I already mentioned the two turnovers, and I think that's really what got him, the pick six, and then the other fumble set up a second Cowboys score. It was kind of like a Giant loss bingo card, the same things that have been basically plaguing them every week this year, plagued them again. You had the turnovers. They allowed Rico Dowdle to rush for a career-high 120 yards. The rush defense wasn't what it needed to be. The pass protection was not very good. The Giants are missing their two starting tackles in Andrew Thomas and Jimmy Illuminor. So Michael Parsons was all over the place over the course of this game. And then they make enough big plays on offense. So it was the same stuff that's kind of been plaguing them. And then they lose Dexter Lawrence for injury. He'll be out the rest of the year. He's their best player, not just on defense, period. So we'll see how they can survive that, especially with their run defense being as poor as it's been this year. And then Theo Johnson, their promising rookie tight end, he'll be out for the year with a foot injury. So not only lost the game, but lost a couple of key players the rest of the way as well.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And speaking of injuries, DeVito is questionable Sunday's game against the Saints. Can you give us the lowdown and the latest on his injury?
Yeah, I think he's going to be able to go. They did test last week, and there was no structural damage or anything. He was just very sore. He even said to reporters that if the game was on Sunday, he thinks he would have been able to go. He said that last Thursday. Now, what's changed between last Thursday and now? We haven't spoken to him since. I can't tell you. But based on the fact there was no imaging or MRIs or X-rays that showed an acute injury, I think the soreness should abide. And if the Giants decide to go back to DeVito, I think he'll be ready to go health-wise. Brian Dable will make that announcement on Wednesday.
All right, we'll see. Now, the poor performance of New York football this year should really be its own segment on this show. I know I mentioned that to you earlier before we started. Let's move on to the Jets. A close game against the Seahawks on Sunday, but they lost in ugly fashion after blowing a 14-0 lead. Where did it start to unravel for the Jets on Sunday?
Yeah, again, I think the Jets kind of figuring out a way to lose. They had a lead in that game, and, Leonard Williams and Julian Love, two former New York Giants, and Leonard Williams also a former New York Jet, just really dominated the game. And Leonard Williams had that pick six. Aaron Rodgers did not play all that well again. Devontae Adams had a big drop on a pass down the field. Breece Hall couldn't get going in the running game. And look, it's been the story all year for the Jets. They just have not played their best football, and they've lost a ton of close games. And it was another one of those. And I'm sure Leonard Williams really enjoyed his revenge game going up against the team that drafted him. He's still playing really well, even though he's, hitting 30 years old now. He was drafted way back in 2015. So must have felt good for him to have that big game. And Leonard Williams is a great dude. I'm happy for him. And the Jets just can't figure this stuff out, man. And I think this Aaron Rodgers experiment will slowly wind down to an end over these next 5 games.
Well, let's get on to Aaron Rodgers. I'm glad you segued there because the Jets have played 30 games since signing Aaron Rodgers last year. Now, in those 30 games, John, Rodgers has won exactly 3. Now, is this shaping up to be the biggest bust in New York sports history, assuming we didn't pass that threshold already?
That's a really good question. I think in terms of a big name free agent signing, yes. We've gone through draft picks for both teams that have not worked out. But look, they knew when they brought in Rodgers, this was a high-risk game they were playing. They thought it was worth it. They had had so many issues at quarterback with Zach Wilson. They thought they had a really good defense, and they had Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, other good pieces around him that you slot in a quarterback. And even if Aaron Rodgers wasn't vintage like 2011 Aaron Rodgers, he'd be good enough with the other pieces they had to make the Jets a real playoff contender. And I think the way it turned out, some quarterbacks like Tom Brady can play into their mid-40s, but I think we've seen Aaron Rodgers decline here at the end, and the Jets caught him on the decline. And he's just not the same guy. Obviously, the Achilles last year, really unfortunate. I'm sure if he never hurt his Achilles, he'd be a better player today. He can move around better. Last year, the Jets would have had a better shot. But look, it just hasn't worked out. And I think in terms of what the expectations were for a guy that's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer in Aaron Rodgers, it's a pretty huge disappointment.
All good things must come to an end, as they say. John Schmeelk, as much
And bad
displeasure.
things.
Yes. As much displeasure as New York football has brought this year, it's always a pleasure having you on, my friend. Thanks so much.
I appreciate it. And soon we'll have the Knicks, and the Knicks are actually playing okay, Mike. So
yeah, and there's still a long way to go in that season. Thanks
Yep.
so much. Head over to ONNJ.com for the latest news and sports anytime.